Elk were found throughout the state prior to the arrival of the early settlers. As European settlers increased in the state, we saw a pretty rapid decline in elk populations, to the point that by the mid-1850s there were very few elk left in this entire state, and they were pretty well gone by around 1860. We considered restoration of elk about 10 years ago. We found that there was a place in Missouri where we could put elk in southeastern Ozarks, and we felt the habitat would support them and general public acceptance, but at the time we decided not to go forward with the elk restoration. So over time we've seen, gradual increasing interest in an elk restoration. I think one of the big concerns that the public had 10 years ago is I think their perception was that this was going to be a statewide effort. We defined a small area in southeast Missouri, but I think a lot of folks said, well, they'll be statewide before you know it. They tend to kind of correlate deer and elk and think that, well, yeah, we'll have elk statewide. We have a very defined area as an elk restoration area in that east central Ozarks, and we have no intention of elk being in northern Missouri. We don't want them in Kansas City, St. Louis, Columbia. We don't even want them in parts of central and western Missouri where there's still quite a bit of agriculture. So our intent is to keep them in that restoration zone in southeastern Missouri, and the area we now have defined has about 60% of public ownership, and that's a very high percentage of public ownership. That's good. And so I think we can minimize potential conflicts with elk by holding them on public property as much as possible. Since the 2000 elk restoration feasibility study, there have been a number of successes in other states like Arkansas and Kentucky and Pennsylvania, very popular, very economically beneficial restorations. Probably the biggest difference is kind of our understanding of chronic wasting disease. We understand a little bit more about it. We can do a live animal test. We have some proven sources of elk that we know are chronic wasting disease free because they've been tested thoroughly. And we have I think a very good disease testing protocol that would allow us to bring elk into Missouri without the fear of introducing chronic wasting disease or any other type of disease that might affect wildlife or domestic livestock. At this point in time, if we go forward with the restoration, how many we'll introduce, it depends on availability. But once we've reintroduced them, we'll track populations and population growth and have a target population. Once we achieve target population, or perhaps even a little bit before that, we will start looking at management opportunities and in terms of maintaining numbers at levels that are desirable from the public standpoint and from the habitat standpoint, as well as ensuring that elk don't then become too abundant that they start moving outside of the range. We view hunting as the most practical and best way to manage elk populations in the future if we go forward with this. Hunting provides a great deal of recreational opportunity. It can provide some economic benefits to communities and is a very efficient way of managing numbers. And so we view hunting as the best way to do that. A lot of this is based on experience from other states, Arkansas and Kentucky and Pennsylvania. And most states now with elk restorations are hunting them, and very effective programs and very, very popular programs. Before the Commission considers the restoration, we will be holding public meetings down in the area where we would do the elk restoration if we do go forward with one. And so that's the plan, to kind of get some public input, learn what concerns the public about an elk restoration, and try to address those issues in any kind of plan we develop. It's not a done deal. The Conservation Commission has not said we're going to do an elk restoration. They just said that there seems to be interest out there. There may be some opportunities. Let's go forward and look at a plan, address the issues of concern with our citizens, look at the biology of it, and then bring the information back to them. And then in October they would decide whether we go forward with an elk restoration. One of our charges as an agency is to restore native species to the Missouri landscape. Elk, I think, would be a wonderful addition to the eastern Ozarks. I think the public would enjoy them greatly. I think there would be recreational benefits from the standpoint of viewing opportunities and ultimately hunting opportunities. I think there would be some economic benefits to the southeastern Ozarks, especially those communities in that specific area in terms of tourism, and that other states have experienced. This is something we've learned from other states. Arkansas and Kentucky and Pennsylvania have experienced really significant tourism increases as a result of their elk restorations. People really like to see elk, like to watch elk, and so it's been a real boon to some of those communities.